Stonewall effectively started because half a dozen gay men had a rather boozy lunch at Ian McKellen's house, and instead of sitting around a piano afterwards banging out show tunes, they sat around a typewriter, because we only had electric typewriters in those days, no laptops, nothing like that, and they banged out a manifesto for what they thought, the absolutely basic manifesto of what needed to happen. And luckily, amongst those happy, boozy, determined men, some of whom had never been particularly activist before, like Ian and a couple of the others, they said, we better get an equal number of women in. And that was very new. There were lots of organisations that called themselves lesbian and gay, but they were 90 men and one gay woman. And indeed, it would probably be someone who called herself a gay woman rather than a lesbian, which was rather racy, being a lesbian compared to being a gay woman. This was equality right from the word go, and there'd been a couple of other attempts to do that, which actually I'd been involved in, but they'd never been genuine in that way. And God bless it, Stonewall actually was right from the start. And I was very lucky because I was invited to come in and join it.
I basically see Stonewall as the suffragists and Outrage as the suffragettes. So Stonewall did mainstream lobbying within the parliamentary system, whereas Outrage was very much focused on direct action protests to raise awareness about issues and to put people in power under pressure to change.
Stonewall was very different, and we got a lot of flack. Got a lot of flack because we sent Ian McKellen in to talk to John Major, because someone like Ian McKellen had not been a gay activist. But Ian opened doors that most of us could not dream of. Ian could sit next to Princess Diana at dinner and have a little cosy chat to her about things. They all wanted to sit next to him. The only things that impress politicians, in my experience, are sometimes their own constituents, the press, and celebrities. And Ian was brilliant because I've never met anyone who can take a brief like Ian, and he had that basic decency of the core commitment to equality. And sometimes within the group we had to work out, very early on we established that equality had to be the line, straight people had it, we had it, but actually in practical terms, when it came to something like the age of consent, you still had people within the group who were kind of like, well, yes, it ought to be 16, but we'll never get it, so maybe we should just fight for 18. It's like, no, we have to ask for equality. But we had those discussions, we had those arguments, and we talked them through. We didn't just go, well, I'm sorry, we're splitting at this point, which was kind of like what a lot of gay groups had been before that. It was like you had a row and you split. Those Monty Python jokes in The Life of Brian about the People's Front of Judea and the Judean People's Front were absolutely true of leftism at that point, far worse than today, and they were also true of most of the rights movements, the women's movement, the gay movement. We all, if you had a row, you went off in other directions and nobody spoke to each other. And Stonewall didn't. Stonewall had arguments and then worked out what we really could all agree to, which was, when it came down to it, equal rights, and then went for it. And for people like me, I regarded equal rights as just a start, because I did come out of the feminist lesbian movement, and if you said equality to me, I'd be equal to what? Do I really want that? But actually, if equality is the baseline, nobody had fought for that, or nobody had fought successfully and articulately for that. So for me, it was, that what Stonewall stood for was a bit of a stepping stone. But actually, the longer I worked on that stuff, the more I realised how incredibly important it was to that vast hinterland of lesbians and gay men, because that's who we were for at that stage, lesbians and gay men who didn't put on badges, who didn't go on marches, but who just wanted to be treated like anybody else. And nobody had been doing things for them in a way that they could connect to before Stonewall. And Stonewall very quickly transmogrified from this very elitist and very defended structure, and it was deliberately designed as hermetically sealed. Nobody could come in and try and take us over, because we'd seen that happen with group after group. At that point, lesbian and gay groups were regularly monstered by left groups who wanted us to take on their ideology. So Workers' Power or the Socialist Worker Party or the Workers' Revolutionary Party, people like that, would come in and then they'd try and impose their own manifesto on any given group. Stonewall was designed so that nobody walked in unless they were invited. But that little, very elitist group rapidly became the most populist of the gay groups who were around at that time, because you could pay a couple of quid and get a newsletter and, go and talk to your MP, and we'd give you the tools to do that in a way that people had not connected with en masse before. We hit at just the right time, when people had been radicalised by Section 28, which made them feel threatened in a way that they hadn't before, and especially lesbians who'd never really got on board with the gay age of consent agenda, most of us. Suddenly we were all in the same boat, we were all being persecuted. The rest of the persecutions had come to the fore, not just the age of consent. And it was absolutely right for lots of people to say, well, I want to do something, but what can I do? And hello, give us a few quid and we'll tell you how to sort your MP out. But I also still believe in the other Stonewall mantra, which got them into a lot of hot water. If you look at the gay press coverage in the mid-90s, I mean, Stonewall was not well taken in the community, and they were seen as elitist and very reformist. And they were reformist, of course they were, that was what they were there for. People forget now that Stonewall has always been a controversial figure within the activist world of LGBT people. But it's always been buoyed up by the fact that there's a vast middle ground of people who just want to be allowed to get on with their lives in the ordinary everyday world. And it has made a massive change for them. And that was a necessary change, and that change doesn't always suit me because I'm actually from a different bit of the tribe, but I'm really pleased it's there for everybody else.